It didn't start with a press conference, it didn't start with a playbook, it started with a reaction. The second Atlanta's coaching decision went public, one voice cut through the noise: Cam Newton, and he didn't sound surprised, he sounded tired. Because to Cam, this wasn't just another hire. It was another example of the league choosing familiarity over evolution. Another moment where potential took a back seat to comfort. And another situation where a young quarterback's future suddenly felt less secure than advertised. Atlanta fans were celebrating stability. Cam was warning about consequences. He hinted at past situations where development stalled, confidence faded, and blame quietly shifted away from the people in charge. He didn't name names immediately. He didn't need to. The message was clear enough to spark debate across social media and sports media alike. And the more people looked into it, the more uncomfortable the timing started to feel, especially with Atlanta's future hanging in the balance. The reaction wasn't universal excitement. In fact, it was hesitation. The moment Atlanta's hearing decision became public, the response split cleanly down the middle. Some called it safe, others called it smart. But a growing number of fans, analysts, and former players all asked the same quiet question: safe for who? Because on paper, the hire checked familiar boxes: league experience, locker room credibility, a resume that looked comfortable to ownership. And that's exactly why eyebrows went up. This felt less like a forward-thinking move and more like a choice rooted in comfort, the kind the NFL leans on when uncertainty starts to creep in. Almost immediately, comparisons started flying, not to success stories but to past situations where teams prioritized stability over development. Situations where young quarterbacks were promised growth only to be handed systems that never truly fit them. Fans noticed it, analysts hinted at it, and former players didn't dance around it at all. Cam Newton was one of the first to say what others were thinking. He didn't frame it as an attack. He framed it as a pattern where franchises talk about building the future while quietly installing leadership that feels more aligned with the past. According to Cam, that gap between messaging and reality is where careers stall. What made the timing even stranger was Atlanta's position. This wasn't a rebuilding roster looking for a steady hand. This was a team at a crossroads, sitting on young talent that needed clear direction and intentional development. In that context, a conservative hire didn't feel neutral. It felt like a signal. Social media picked up on it fast. Clips circulated. Fans pulled old quotes. People started asking whether this was really about football philosophy or about minimizing risk for decision makers upstairs. Because if things don't work out, a safe hire rarely costs executives their jobs, but it can cost players years of progress. And that's where the tension really started to build. Because this wasn't just about one coach or one role. It was about what Atlanta was prioritizing: growth or protection, innovation or familiarity, development or damage control. At first glance, the hire looked harmless, even logical, but the deeper people dug, the more it felt like a move designed to steady the organization rather than elevate it. And that realization quietly changed the entire conversation, especially once people started asking who this decision actually benefits in the long run. The conversation shifted once Cam Newton spoke. He didn't just criticize a single decision, he highlighted a trend that's been quietly shaping careers for years. And the example he used wasn't random: Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland. Sanders wasn't a project player, he was a quarterback with talent, pedigree, and preparation. Yet under Stefanski, he cycled through confusion, inconsistent support, and limited opportunity. Growth stalled, confidence wavered. Momentum never built. Cam framed it bluntly: this isn't about one game, 1 week, or one misstep. It's about a pattern, a repeated inability to develop young quarterbacks into true franchise leaders. And what's striking is how visible that pattern is. 13 quarterbacks cycled through Cleveland under a Stefanski, 13 chances, and no clear success story. Analysts, fans, and players alike started asking, if this approach didn't work there, why would it work in Atlanta? What amplified the concern wasn't just history, it was context. The Falcons' roster is young, dynamic, and full of potential. Michael Penix, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, these aren't players who need coaching shortcuts. They need structure, clarity, and trust. Cam emphasized that a head coach isn't just a play caller. Coaching is about understanding personalities, building relationships, and adapting to each player's growth path. Fail at that, and the talent in front of you doesn't matter. Social media exploded. Fans shared Cam's comments dissecting each phrase. Analysts debated the optics. Some questioned whether cultural understanding was being undervalued in hearing decisions. Cam's message was clear. Success isn't only measured in wins and losses, it's measured in how organizations nurture talent, give opportunity, and build trust. And if the leadership philosophy doesn't align with that, history suggests the results will repeat. Numbers backed him up. Stefanski's Cleveland teams didn't just fail to elevate young quarterbacks, they underperformed compared to the team Atlanta just fired. And that disconnect raised eyebrows. If the metrics and track record don't inspire confidence, then what exactly is Atlanta betting on? That question resonated far beyond Falcons fans. The league was watching, and every snap from Atlanta's young roster suddenly carried extra weight. And so, the hire became more than a coaching decision. It became a lens into priorities, philosophy, and leadership. Every move, every play, every decision would be measured against the shadow of past patterns. And Cam made sure everyone understood the stakes. This isn't theory. It's real players, real careers, and real futures on the line. The conversation now shifted to what this hire means for the Falcons' young roster. Cam Newton didn't hold back. Atlanta is betting its future on a coach whose track record raises serious questions. Michael Penix, a promising quarterback, steps into a system where development has historically stalled. Drake London and Kyle Pitts, two of the league's brightest young weapons, face a similar challenge. Talent alone won't carry them. Structure, consistency, and trust are what turn potential into production. And Cam's point was razor sharp. Under Stefanski, those fundamentals have rarely been present. Fans immediately understood the stakes. Social media buzzed with debates. Analysts argued over philosophy versus stats, while others dug into the cultural implications Newton emphasized. According to Cam, coaching isn't only about X's and O's. It's about reading personalities, meeting players where they are, and building confidence, not just calling plays. When that system has failed repeatedly, the concern isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition. Cam pressed the point further with hard numbers. 13 quarterbacks cycled through Cleveland under Stefanski, 13 different opportunities without a clear franchise QB emerging. That isn't coincidence, that's instability. And now Atlanta is putting its young roster under the microscope with a coach whose history suggests repetition rather than innovation. Every snap, every play, every decision will be measured against past failures. He also addressed the argument some supporters would make, that past playoff appearances or isolated wins indicate capability. Cam dismantled it. Those successes, he argued, came despite coaching, not because of it. Momentum didn't last. Growth didn't follow. Confidence wasn't nurtured. Patterns, not exceptions, tell the real story. And fans, analysts, and players all know it. Finally, Cam tied it all back to culture. Atlanta isn't just another NFL city. It's a hub of identity, influence, and opportunity. Decisions here resonate beyond the scoreboard. They send messages about trust, inclusivity, and commitment to development. And in Cam's eyes, this hire communicates caution, repetition, and missed opportunity, a lesson not lost on anyone paying attention. As the spotlight shifts to Atlanta, the message is clear. This isn't just football. This is careers, culture, and accountability under scrutiny. And Cam Newton made sure the league and the fans can't ignore it. Once Cam Newton's comments hit, the reaction was instantaneous. Social media exploded. Fans debated whether he was overstepping or speaking uncomfortable truths. Analysts dissected every phrase, trying to frame it as reactionary or locker room drama. But the more you dug in, the more the pattern became undeniable. This was a systemic issue, not a single rant. Every thread, every tweet, every comment circled back to one question: what does this mean for Atlanta's young quarterbacks? Some fans defended the Falcons, citing Stefanski's previous playoff run in Cleveland, but Cam preemptively shut that down. He called it selective memory, a revisionist take that ignored the bigger picture: inconsistent development, multiple quarterbacks cycling through, and stalled growth. Numbers, not anecdotes, mattered here. 13 quarterbacks, 0 clear success stories, and now Atlanta is putting its promising roster into the same system. That's a hard sell, no matter how you slice it. Rumors began swirling immediately. Some suggested the Falcons believed a new environment would fix old patterns. Others speculated the front office prioritized familiarity over results. Cam's point cut through all that. Changing cities doesn't change leadership philosophy. Culture, trust, and coaching approach matter more than logos or stadiums. And if history is any guide, those foundational elements have been shaky under Stefanski. Media coverage didn't shy away from the cultural angle either. Newton emphasized that Atlanta, New Orleans, and Carolina form the blackest division in the NFL. That's not just a statistic, it's context. Players who come from authentic, culturally rich backgrounds require coaching that can meet them there, not force them into rigid molds. Fans understood that this hire wasn't just about football. It was about messaging, opportunity, and accountability. As debates raged, Cam stayed on point. He wasn't chasing clout, he wasn't stirring drama for clicks. He was highlighting a repeated pattern: talented quarterbacks entering a system that hasn't consistently nurtured them. Michael Penix, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts aren't experiments, they're investments, and if the same leadership approach repeats, skepticism isn't optional, it's rational. By the end of the day, the discussion shifted from "was Cam too harsh?" to "what will Atlanta do now?" Every decision, every snap, every development moment is under a microscope. And while the spotlight is intense, Cam's critique forces a deeper question. Can young talent truly thrive in a system with a history of cycling quarterbacks without consistent success? The league, the fans, and the Falcons themselves are about to find out. The bigger picture isn't just Atlanta, it's the NFC South. Cam Newton made that clear. This division isn't like any other. Atlanta, New Orleans, Carolina. It's where culture, identity, and football collide. And when you place a young, talented roster under leadership with a shaky track record of quarterback development, it doesn't just affect one team, it sends ripples across the entire division. Opponents will notice, analysts will debate, and fans will scrutinize every snap. Think about the Falcons' core: Michael Penix, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. These aren't rookies to experiment with their foundational pieces. Penix carries upside comparable to Shedeur Sanders' physical tools, but the Falcons are betting on a coach who struggled to turn potential into performance in Cleveland. History isn't a guarantee, but patterns matter. And patterns, as Cam emphasized, show repeated instability. 13 quarterbacks cycled through Stefanski's system without one becoming a clear franchise leader. That trend doesn't evaporate with a new uniform. What's at stake isn't just wins and losses, it's development, trust, and long-term culture. Atlanta's young stars need structure and consistency. They need coaches willing to meet them where they are and invest in growth rather than defaulting to control. If Stefanski falls back on the same rigid approach, this roster could plateau or worse, regress. And in a division as competitive as the NFC South, regression isn't just an internal problem. It can cost playoff positioning, media credibility, and fan loyalty. Some argue this hire could shake things up, force a fresh start. But Cam's critique cuts through the optimism. A new environment doesn't rewrite philosophy. Accountability starts at the top. Ownership must ask the hard questions, not just accept a name with experience. And in the eyes of many observers, Atlanta skipped that step. The real test will be how the Falcons manage expectations, nurture their talent, and respond to early growing pains. Fans are watching, analysts are waiting. Every quarterback snap will be examined through the lens of history. Cam Newton didn't just raise concerns about one hire, he highlighted a crossroads for an entire franchise. Atlanta's next moves could either validate hope or confirm skepticism. The NFC South isn't patient with underperformance, and leadership that fails to develop young stars will be exposed quickly. The stakes are enormous, and the spotlight isn't fading anytime soon. Cam Newton didn't just critique Atlanta, he challenged the league's approach to young black quarterbacks. His point was sharp: talent alone isn't enough. Quarterbacks need belief, patience, and a coaching staff that understands their backgrounds, communication styles, and pressures. When history shows repeated missteps with this exact profile, look at Shedeur Sanders, skepticism becomes justified. This isn't theory, it's observable patterns. Social media erupted as fans dissected Cam's comments. Analysts debated whether his perspective was cultural critique or football criticism, or both. Some argued Atlanta should get the benefit of the doubt, citing the opportunity for a fresh start. Others agreed with Newton, a coach with 13 quarterbacks cycled in Cleveland, inconsistent results, and a shaky development track record isn't the safest bet for a young, talented roster. The narrative extends beyond one team. It's about trust and opportunity in the NFL. Ownership decisions send messages: who gets chances, who is supported, who is trusted. Cam framed Atlanta's hire as a reflection of priorities, asking whether the Falcons value development or simply recycling familiar leadership regardless of outcomes. Every snap of Michael Penix, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts will be examined, not just for performance, but for the environment surrounding them. Media outlets highlighted the symbolic weight of the hire. It sparked debates about corporate culture, accountability, and diversity in leadership. Newton emphasized that the conversation isn't just about X's and O's, it's about culture, community, and identity. He pushed fans to consider the broader implications. If a coach struggles to develop talent in one city, how will they handle a roster brimming with potential in another? Patterns matter, history matters, and Newton argued that Atlanta's choice ignores both at its peril. Cam didn't offer definitive predictions, but he framed a question the NFL cannot ignore. Will Atlanta repeat a pattern or redefine its approach? Every decision now carries added scrutiny. Ownership, coaches, players, and fans are all watching. In a league where young black quarterbacks often face amplified pressure, leadership mistakes resonate louder and longer. Newton's critique isn't just commentary, it's a warning, a challenge, and a call for accountability. The Falcons' response will set the tone for the season, the division, and the league's broader narrative about opportunity, trust, and player development. Cam Newton didn't just speak in generalities, he backed his argument with numbers. During Kevin Stefanski's time in Cleveland, 13 different quarterbacks cycled through the system. That's not a fluke or bad luck. That's instability at the most important position in football. Franchise quarterbacks don't develop amid chaos. They emerge through consistency, trust, and structure. Every snap, every practice, every opportunity matters, and when leadership constantly resets the system, growth stalls. Cam highlighted that Atlanta's young roster, Michael Penix, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, is inheriting a team brimming with potential. These players don't need shortcuts, they need clarity. With Stefanski's track record, the concern is whether he can provide it. Past results don't inspire confidence. Underperformance, inconsistent development, and revolving personnel were hallmarks of his previous tenure. Fans, analysts, and players have all seen it unfold before. The numbers deepen the concern. Over 2 seasons, Stefanski's record was worse than the coach Atlanta just fired. That fact challenges narratives that the Falcons' new hire is a step forward. Cam argued that selective memory, pointing to one playoff run or one successful moment, doesn't outweigh a pattern of stagnation. Development matters more than highlight reels. Every quarterback who entered Cleveland under Stefanski left with lessons unlearned, confidence shaken, or potential unfulfilled. Momentum never had time to build. Structures that produce winning quarterbacks, consistency, patience, mentorship were absent. And now the same leadership philosophy moves to Atlanta, tasked with managing a young, high-upside roster. Newton framed the hire as a crossroads. Patterns matter in football. Analysts study them, front offices consider them, and players experience them firsthand. A trend of limited quarterback progression isn't coincidence, it's indicative. By ignoring history, Atlanta risks repeating the same missteps. Cam emphasized that success isn't just about talent or playbooks, it's about coaching that adapts, communicates, and fosters growth. The revolving door statistic isn't just a number, it's a warning. Every snap Michael Penix takes will be scrutinized through the lens of Stefanski's past. Fans will watch for development, chemistry, and trust, not just wins and losses. Cam Newton's critique transformed a coaching hire into a narrative about accountability, leadership, and the real measures of success in the NFL. The Falcons' season and the growth of their young quarterbacks now hangs in the balance, and every choice will echo far beyond the field. Cam Newton didn't stop at stats or trends. He framed this hire in a larger cultural and leadership context. Atlanta isn't just another NFL city, it's a hub of influence, culture, and identity. The NFC South, as Cam repeatedly emphasized, is the blackest division in football, a place where community, representation, and opportunity matter as much as wins and losses. Leadership decisions here carry extra weight. When ownership brings in a coach with a shaky history of quarterback development, it isn't just a football decision, it's a message. Newton's point was clear. Young, talented players don't thrive under inconsistent mentorship. They need belief, patience, and structure. They need coaches willing to adapt, communicate, and grow with them. Atlanta's roster, stacked with athletic upside, deserves that foundation. If history is any guide, patterns repeat. The question isn't whether Stefanski can call plays, it's whether he can foster growth, trust, and opportunity in a young team. Cam also challenged the narratives fans might hear, that failures belong to Shedeur Sanders or other players. He rejected that framing entirely. The system, not the individual, failed. A revolving door of 13 quarterbacks in Cleveland left consistent development absent. Wins, losses, and highlight moments aside, the pattern was clear. When leadership ignores repeated trends, accountability lands squarely on those making the decisions. The hire became symbolic. It's about culture, representation, and organizational priorities. Cam asked fans to look beyond press releases, stats, and media spin. He invited them to question whether actions truly align with values. Do the Falcons believe in developing young talent, or are they comfortable recycling familiar leadership regardless of outcomes? That is the conversation now. Every snap Michael Penix takes, every route Drake London runs, and every block from Kyle Pitts will be scrutinized against the backdrop of Stefanski's history. The spotlight isn't just on plays, it's on growth, mentorship, and trust. Cam Newton forced a conversation the league can no longer ignore. In the end, the story isn't just about one coach or one team. It's about accountability, opportunity, and patterns that echo across the NFL. Cam's critique serves as both warning and challenge. Watch closely, question loudly, and demand that talent be nurtured, not mismanaged. The Falcons' future and the development of young quarterbacks hangs in the balance, and every choice this season will speak volumes about the values guiding this franchise.